So I think we can start. It's 9 o'clock. We don't want to delay from the beginning of the day till, so you have to rush. So good morning, everybody. My name is Danny Wijnschenk. I'm a sales engineer based in Belgium. And today I'm going to talk to you about how to use unstructured data in your maybe existing application or even new applications. So really what we see is that a lot of applications are using what we call structured data, data that's found in tables and fields, data that you can easily process and put in applications. We seldom see that those applications are using unstructured data, and when I talk about unstructured data, I talk about text, because there's a lot more than text. I'm not talking about images and stuff, only text. So a lot of applications just don't use text, well, other than entering some text and searching maybe in it or printing it. They're not doing anything else because it's too difficult. What can you get, what information can you get out of a piece of text? That's not easy if you don't have some kind of technology that will do that for you. But saying that it's difficult is no excuse to ignore that information, because if you want to do an application with as much information as possible, well, you should not ignore what's too difficult. So this presentation is what can we do to bring that unstructured data in your existing application. And what I always say is you have to do that in steps. You can, well, you should have some kind of use case where you say, okay, ultimately I want to do this with text. But people that build an application or a journey just to go to that goal, maybe it can be a long goal, and if it takes 1 year and in, let's say, the journey to that goal, well, you should use that journey to get some quick wins out of it. Don't start with a big project and only get some value out of it after a year. No, from the first day you want to see some value coming out of it. And each step of the way, more value until you reach your goal. I don't like to see projects where you have to wait for 1 year to have the first result. So that's not what I want. So that's what we call agile development. So you want to iterate it, and in each little step, you have some more value coming out of it. So that's what I'm going to describe. And to describe it, I used some existing proof of concept about asset management. So, well, maybe I can show you. So let's pretend we have this application. Let me, well, I don't have an asset management application to show you because I'm not a solution partner like you where you have those applications, but I have to have some demo to show you the principles. So I know that some of you in the audience do have that, so don't say, oh, this is not right. It's just a demo. It only took me 1 day to write it, so don't shoot me. So suppose I'm a trader and I want to, I have some people that trust, that give me money so I can invest, I can buy and sell stocks and shares for them. So I have this existing application. I'm going to buy another stock. I will just give it some number. I will say it's in euro. It has a very low rating. It's in the alcohol industry, and I buy a lot of shares from it. I just do a long, and then I say execute trade, and it will, well, launch a trade and buys me a lot of stock. But what did I forget in this? Well, the customer where I do this trade for, well, they have all like profiles. Well, some customers say I am a defensive, I have a defensive profile, so you cannot just buy any stock with low ratings. You should really talk to me what I want you to buy for me. So In fact, those applications, they should verify what trades are possible for that customer. And of course, they do that. They build those rules by hand in the application. But in this case, the organization that is doing the trades, they have these agreements, and it's called IMA, Investment Management Agreement, where they state, okay, you shall not buy any shares of this rating in this industry, etc., etc. So there are long documents, all written in text, an agreement signed by the two parties. And, well, the problem is it's plain text, so an application cannot just read that policy and apply the rules. So somebody, and those documents are, well, they are updated regularly, a lot, so it's difficult to maintain those texts, and every time somebody changes something, writing a rule in the application to, you know, to be exact like the changes that they did in the text. So ideally, we want the application to read the text in our agreement and apply the rules that are written in full text. So that's really the goal of this POC. Can we just use a technology that will automatically scan those agreements and apply the rules in the trading without somebody having to read it and to define rules and then the next day wondering, did somebody update the document and should I verify if my rules are still there? So we want to do that automatically. So that's the end goal. And I'm not saying that I can do this in 40 minutes, but this is your goal. So we want to get there. We want to use INO for that. And you can do that in steps. You cannot do that in one big leap. So I want to go to the journey with you and show you how we can get there. So this is this kind of agreement. Maybe you recognize it. So people saying like, okay, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and this kind of document contains a lot of rules that we want to automatically get out of this text and put in some logic in the application. So how do you start with this? Well, first of all, who knows anything about INO in the audience? Nobody? Okay, that's good. So I have a few slides. I have a few slides to explain it. Not a lot, because in the 40 minutes I cannot do everything. So just in a few words, what is INO? Well, INO takes text, real text, so not images or PDFs or Word. You have to give, let's say, TXT to INO, and it will derive information out of it. So how INO is doing that? Well, INO uses language models to do that. So in this case, it's an English phrase, so it will use our English language model, but we have 10 languages that we can use. But if we don't support your language, the project stops there. So for most of you, I think are using English or German, French, Spanish. That's, we have up to 10 languages. So that's the first thing. We use the language of the text of the phrase. And in fact, the language model is designed to detect the relations in your sentences. So in fact, that's about the only thing that the INO engine is doing. What are the relations in your phrase, in your sentence? A relation are, let's say, verbs, but also other stuff like for, prepositions, and other things, but mostly those are verbs. So why do we only search for relations in sentences? Well, it's very easy. We say whatever is between all those relations, that must be words that belong together. So that's in just one sentence what INO is all about. We search relationships, and if we have them, everything in between all those relationships are word groups that together give any meaning, what we call a concept. So finding those three relations, automatically we know that what's left over are concepts. So we know quarterly report is one concept. Nowhere in our language model is stated that quarterly and report are two words that belong together. That's just a byproduct of finding the relations, and quarterly report is just between them. Of course, we have the insignificant words that we just leave out, but that's in one slide what I know is all about. The other thing that we also can do is negation detection. So if there's somewhere in your face a negative, like no, or it is not true that, then we know that concepts are in a negative path, so we can say, okay, we found this concept, but it could be just in a negation. And that's, in fact, what IKNOW gives you. You send a bunch of text in IKNOW, and it gives you an API to know, okay, what are the concepts, what are the relations, what are relations found around chief agent, and queries like that. So IKNOW is a technology, it's not a solution. Meaning, if you just take Cache and IKNOW, you still have to develop an application around it. But these are let's say, the building blocks that, well, you need a language engine to get these building blocks. You cannot just do that by yourself. The biggest problem of using IKNOW is knowing this. So what can I do with it? What kind of business usage do I have by just using that? So then you need to, let's say, think a little bit, have some imagination how you could use that. But I will show you examples. So IKNOW is what we call open-end discovery. In fact, when you compare to a Google search, if you go to a website and to a Google page, you have to enter some information to search. With IKNOW, in fact, we just present to you all the concepts that we found in the text, and we can give you already a list of concepts, relations, etc., without needing to ask anything. So we just give you what's in your data instead of, for example, Google, where you still have to say, okay, I'm searching for this word, give me all the text where this word is found. So like I said, it identifies the concepts, and we call it a bottom-up approach. That means we start from the text. From the text, we find concepts from bottom up. Other technologies use a top-down approach. Top-down is more, I have this knowledge, I have this dictionary with words, I know I need to search them, to match them, and that's what we call top-down. You have already your knowledge, you need to have that knowledge to be able to detect that in your text. Now, because IKNOW only starts from the language, it's domain independent. That means you can use it in healthcare or in legal. It doesn't really matter. As long as the language is supported, you can use IKNOW. So traditionally, if you have a top-down approach, you have, in fact, a high upfront cost, because when you need a dictionary, well, you need to have a dictionary to start with. So traditional technologies, you first have to build your ontology, your dictionary, your knowledge, and only then you can start using it, applying it to your text. So it's a lot of work in the beginning before you can actually start seeing any value with it. With the top-down, the bottom-up approach, it's a lot simpler in the beginning because we don't need dictionaries to start with. That means you can immediately, let's say the next day, when you have your text, the next day we can already give you all the index results and you can start querying your data. So in the beginning, it's a really low upfront cost, and then the path to success is rather smooth. And also with INO, you can discover quick wins along the way. So what I always tell my customers, you have this pot of gold at the end, that's your goal, that's your business case, that's very good, you need to have that. But along the way, you should also look for quick wins. And that's possible with INO, that I'm going to show you in the remainder of the presentation. So whatever project that I see that people do with INO, they're always the same steps. You start with collecting your data, collecting your text, maybe clean them because maybe your text are maybe stored in Excel files with columns, and that's not really good textual data, so sometimes you need to clean that up. And then immediately after you throw it to the INO engine, you can start exploring. Even if your business case has nothing to do, the exploration phase is very easy, and it's also necessary to familiarize yourself with the vocabulary. The next step, well, the first phase is the exploring phase. I will show that how that goes. After the exploration phase, you will encounter that INO doesn't really know all the concepts that it will find in your text. INO doesn't really know the difference between, for example, a heart attack and friendly greetings in a medical note. Because for INO, those are two concepts, and one is medically relevant, the other one is just a friendly greeting. And for a doctor, heart attack is maybe relevant, and friendly greetings is just, you know, an appreciation of the patient, but doesn't really give you any medical relevancy. But for INO, those are two valid concepts, so INO doesn't really know which one is more interesting. So adding knowledge, adding dictionaries, gives INO the ability to use that relevancy. So that means that he can say, okay, your heart attack is found in some way in a medical dictionary, so it must be more important than friendly greetings, which is just a way of saying hello. You can add dictionaries, you can also use business rules, and also the last step, which is almost every time forgotten, you can also use INO proactively. Instead of waiting till somebody writes a text and then doing all this effort to get data out of it, whenever people are writing the text, while they are writing, you can already use INO to say, hey, I think you're going to write this. I will give you some autocomplete possibilities, or I give you already some hints what other people were writing with the same words. So you can maybe steer a little bit how people are writing unstructured data, instead of waiting till they have done it and then trying to figure out what they did. So, for example, with our use case, if you want to read all those financial documents, the first thing you need to know, well, what's in the contract? If I start a project with those financial documents, I need to start discovering what's in there. So I can, of course, read all those documents, or I can use the different ways that INO provides us to do queries on them. For example, what are the most frequent concepts that are used in those financial documents? What are the relations that are used with it? What are all the other concepts that are used, for example, around trade and queries like that? So I will give you some examples about that. But for me, what also is very important is knowing from the first day or the first days if your text is containing the right information. You've seen the curves, like with INO there is only a small step in the beginning. Well, that means that from the first or the second day you can already see, okay, is my data, is my text containing valid information that I want to use? You don't want to discover that after half of a year, that your source is not containing the necessary information that you need. So you don't want to spend 3 months figuring that out. You want to know that from the beginning. And okay, that's no business for us, but I rather have you see that in one day than that you spend 3 months on a project and saying, well, you know, we didn't really find good information in our text. So I only have a few of those agreements on my laptop, so I cannot show you, let's say, the top 5,000 concepts that I find. I just don't have enough information. But still, with the stuff that I have, we can already do some queries. For example, I'm using here just what we call the I Know Knowledge Portal, which is a tool which is built in when you install Cache, which helps you to explore a domain of text that you have indexed in I Know. So one of the things I wanted to show is give me a list of all the bonds that are used in those texts. And for example, you can directly see, okay, I have these investment grade bonds, I have convertible bonds, corporate bonds. So it's very easy to get lists of concepts that are related to each other or similar, and well, explore a little bit what is your vocabulary that's being used. Because even if you want to use existing dictionaries in the next phase, it could be that the vocabulary that is used in your organization is different than the academic list of concepts that is used to build those dictionaries. You want to really to see the vocabulary that is used in your notes, not what should have been used in the industry. So another query could be, for example, we see in the top concepts securities. If I click on them, I can click on it. For example, in the related concept, that means that are all concepts that are around your word securities. You can see, well, you have related, that are the concepts that are in a direct relation with my securities. That means it's for example, securities bought by customer. That's a direct relation. Proximity profile is more surrounding. That could be somewhere else in the sentence. So if I use that, you can see, for example, that frequently around securities you find words like alcohol, currency, tobacco companies. So that means, well, apparently, well, I can click on, well, you can see here an example. Maybe I have to put it a little bit higher. So apparently in those IMAs, when they talk about securities, they use a lot of restrictions. You can buy a security, but restricted by this or that. So immediately you can say, okay, so if I want to create rules, I can use that information. I already know that I should make rules about what kind of industry or what kind of rule restriction I should use when somebody wants to buy a security. So this is just a discovery phase, and it helps to familiarize yourself with the language. I'm not going to do this one, but for example, if I just do proximity of ratings, it gives me stuff like Moody's, Standard & Poor's, Fitch. So immediately you see, okay, those are kind of rating agencies that are used. So that could be useful later on. One of the things I found here was, for example, manager, investment manager, client. I wanted to know those concepts, manager, investment manager, client, what are the relations that are used between them? Can I now give me a hint on what are they doing with each other. So I just, instead of giving you a list of relations, I put them in some open source tool to visualize. And for example, you see that an investment manager is doing all that kind of relationships with the client. A manager, in fact, those relationships, if you look at them, notify, assist, in fact, those relations are exactly the same or about the same. So this really indicates that a manager or an investment manager is really the same thing, the same role. So in fact, those are synonyms. So maybe you can already put them in a list of synonyms. So I know it will be the same. So this is just a small example to see that if you want to do this, the discovery exploration phase, having or using some third-party tools that visualize stuff, that greatly helps the discovery phase. I'm not saying that this is the full truth, but it will help you, well, finding stuff about data. I made for some customers some graphs where the circles were bigger if the frequency was higher in the text. So immediately in one glance they could see what concepts are used a lot or more, how are they related to each other. And showing this in a graph is a lot more helpful than just giving them a list of concepts. So already in this phase, although in my use case I want to create those rules, this gives me already some quick wins that I can use. People say me frequently, well, you know, you have this frequency list, we rank the concepts according to the frequency, how much they are used. Why do you do that? Because it doesn't really mean if a concept is more frequent than another, that's more important. If you say give the top 10 of concepts in a text, is the concept that appears the most, is that also the most important concept? Normally, no, that's not the case, but it helps you identify which concepts you have to start your effort in. A concept that is appearing 5,000 times in a bunch of text, if you do some rules around it, it will give you a lot. It gives you a lot more, let's say, wins for the effort than if you do the rule with a concept that only appears 2 times in your text. Then you only have 2 occurrences that really benefit from your rule. So these frequencies are important. Instead of going to this list, I just want to show you some real-time examples that I encountered. In fact, people where the goal was something completely different, and along the way they discovered wins that they didn't want really to, they didn't thought about it in the beginning. For example, I had a hospital and they wanted to predict if we take all the text notes that are written about a patient, can we predict things about it? But along the way, they said to me, you know, in 2010, we had a policy change. We needed, we asked all the doctors to change their vocabulary, because at that time there was a law that said relatives can demand to see the notes of their relatives. And that means that a doctor that maybe before 2010 wrote like, this patient is behaving badly, or then they suddenly had to, you know, smoothen their wordings and say, oh, this client has a little bit of problems, and so they had to change a bit the way of describing stuff. And with I know, first of all, we could show them in statistics that effectively the vocabulary changed from all the text before and after 2010. But by limiting or filtering the text by doctor or by caretaker, they could really see if all the doctors really adhered to that policy. Some doctors just, you know, kept on using their old phrases, and now they could really say, you know, we've seen that you didn't change any of your language, so they could really use that information to steer their internal to apply their internal policy. So for them, that was a quick win, which they really didn't think of from the start. The last example, for example, I was at a prospect. It took me 1 hour to explain INO, and apparently I didn't do a good job, because at the end he said, well, okay, so I have this use case. I want to know, it was a financial organization, I want to know, give me all the documents where you find bonds and where you find this French bank. So, well, I can do that with INO, but frankly, I can do that with any technology, because searching in documents for 2 words, you can do that with any language. That's not really where you need to use INO. But if you ask me, which are all the bonds that are used in phrases that refer to this bank, that's a good typical INO question. But then we can give you all the concepts which have the word bonds in it that are found in a sentence where we also find this French bank. So this is a good query for INO. So sometimes it's about the 2 questions at the bottom are about the same, but the one is just search, and the other one is a typical INO query that's more exploring. So the second step is really, you have indexed a lot of text, you have all these concepts, you can explore them, but you will find out that if you have a good number of text, you have a vast amount of concept that will come out of it. Typically, if you have, let's say, 1 million of text, you have about 30 million concepts that we find in them. So just ranking them by frequency doesn't give you a lot of good information. If you do that on a medical file, you will find patient in the top 10, and you will find doctor in the top 10, and that's really not interesting. So just having a list of concepts and ranking them by frequency, well, it has its limits. So you have to go to the next phase and say, okay, what's really relevant for me? If you want to do that, you need external knowledge. You need some kind of dictionary where you say, okay, I have this dictionary which states which are, let's say, medical diseases, or I have a dictionary that says these are financial instruments, and I can apply them on my text, and then I can, in fact, better see, okay, which are the concepts that really are interesting in my case. So, because I know out of the box, it cannot really say which is relevant or not. So we need dictionaries. You can just use existing dictionaries, or you can create dictionaries by using INO. Why? Because even if you have existing dictionaries, they are built by people that are maybe a little bit far away from the practical situation. So if you have a medical dictionary, they will talk about some kind of disease, but in one particular hospital, maybe they use an abbreviation for that disease. So in that dictionary, you won't find that abbreviation. So if you only use that dictionary, it's not enough. You have to know which are the gaps in that dictionary according to my text. So I have some customers where we did, in fact, the difference, we matched all the concepts that are in the dictionary, and we saw what are the concepts that we didn't find in the dictionary. Can we find interesting concepts there that are not found in the dictionary, because those are the gaps in my dictionary, and I can maybe add it to the dictionary or to some kind of blacklist if I think they are not really relevant. So I have some use cases where people use INO to build dictionaries. There is one example, was a bit funny. A hospital said, like, they were trying to find outcome of patients, and they said, well, you know, if we have a sentence like the patient, the outcome of the patient was as could be expected because it was treated by Dr. X. For them, it was a sign that it was a bad outcome. You will not find that in a dictionary. They just said like, that doctor or that name has a kind of reputation. So that's really local knowledge that you will not find in any dictionary. So in our use case, in fact, when I can show you another demo. In fact, it's what we call a rule builder. At the last slide, I will show you where you can find all this code. In fact, the rule builder is in fact for this trader use case. How can we, from a discovery phase, create some dictionaries? For example, a dictionaries with securities, with the type of bonds, the type of organizations, the type of logic, because we need to have that in our phase of rules. So you want to do some rules like, if you find this kind of stock, followed by, let's say, concepts like, or relations like buying, selling, trading, and then some kind of restriction or an industry like alcohol, tobacco, then we have this rule where we can say, okay, you should not or you should buy if a trade is from an industry. But to be able to go there, you need for all the concepts to put them in, let's say, categories. So you can see, okay, we find some kind of concept. We need to know in which kind of dictionary it's located. So, for example, instruments is a dictionary where you will find all the different stuff that you can trade. So, in fact, if you find something like, let's say, account or security, you can just drag it into here to add it to your dictionary. So this is just the way of trying to add knowledge to the concept. So these are just the concepts that I know finds, and you want to put them in one of those dictionaries. So that's a way to how you could build your own dictionaries. So what are the quick wins when you use dictionaries? Well, first of all, a lot of knowledge is in the heads of people. So they know, okay, this concept that's a disease, or this concept is a financial instrument, or this is a rating. So it's all in their heads. So the first quick win is, well, it helps if we put that information that is in the head of the specialist, we put that somewhere in our database. So if those person leave and you will have another new guy coming in, that information is in your system and they don't have to, ask the guy that's leaving, oh, what do you know about this about our domain? So just to record that in a database is already a good quick win. Also uniformization. We see a lot when we show the index results to, for example, doctors. They're starting a debate about it. They're saying, oh, you should not write it like that, or it should be in that place. It shouldn't be in a discharge note. It should be in a just a explanation. So they start debating and arguing with each other that you're using the wrong, the wrong formula, the wrong text. So they're confronted with their own way of writing. Just highlighting is also a quick win. If I'm interesting, if I'm let's say a specialist and I want to read the document, I want to immediately be attractive to let's say the concepts that concern me. I don't want to read a document of 5 pages. I want to be attracted to the phrases which are really of my domain. So having some highlighting with a dictionary that is maybe built by myself will immediately attract me to, okay, you should really look first to these parts of the text because those are the concepts that you really want to know up front. Of course, now I highlighted everything. That's not what you should do because that doesn't really give you any more information. It just makes you colorblind. So that's not really a good way, but these are all the dictionaries. In fact, it can give you a clue if your dictionaries are really, let's say, matching your text, because every concept that you see here which is not colored isn't really found in any of the dictionaries. So maybe it gives you a clue like, we should have more dictionaries because there are a lot of text which is not highlighted. That means that they will never be used in our rules. Categorization is also something that greatly improves if you have dictionaries. For example, in our financial example, you could maybe try to categorize all the different agreements and immediately know if the profile of a customer is more defensive or more an active customer. So you could maybe write some logic that profile is automatically derived from dictionaries that you build around it. So I know that if I go to the bank, they immediately give me a questionnaire which I should fill so they know if I am a defensive or an active customer, so they know which trades they can do. Well, maybe that can be done automatically if you build some dictionaries and you automatically categorize those customers. So how am I on time? No, I have to finish. Well, the clock is not ticking, so that's a bit of a problem. Okay, so I have 2 more minutes. Okay, so, well, now I see my time running out. Okay, so finally the last step is creating the rules, and instead of showing it on the PowerPoint, I can just show that live. So in fact, the goal of this whole exercise was that in my application, I can take a random agreement, I parse it, I let INO index it, and I've made some rules, templates of rules using all the dictionaries that I built. So in fact, with that matching, that highlighting, I have 3 rules that can be derived from these texts. So this is really the text, and I have a rule which says if you have some kind of security followed by some kind of restriction, in this case alcohol, and it's a negation, then the rule is that you cannot buy this security if it's in the industry of alcohol. And we have this for other rules as well. So what I can do is I can save it. I can save those 3 rules because they're okay. And then in my application that you saw earlier, I can maybe do a new trade. It's a bond, it's just some number. And I want Canadian dollars, and automatically one of the 3 rules that you saw here, where was it? Here, says that you should not buy any security in other than US dollars. So in fact, this application found this rule, and which is very important. It also gives you the text in the agreement where this rule was derived from. So immediately you can see in exactly the wordings of the guy that have written it, if that rule is correct. And it's always also in the medical field, it's always important that whatever you do with INO, whatever you do, you have to point to the exact source of text where you got the information of, because I don't want a machine to give me any clue about my medical file if the doctor cannot really read the text that was the basis of that information. Because you're still dealing with text, and it can, well, in text, in language, you can say whatever you want in millions of ways, so you should really have this verification. So this is really what I wanted to say, because I'm running out of time. So if you are interested in these demos, they are on a GitHub, so you can get them there. After this presentation, of course, Luca will give a great presentation about Docker, I think. But anyway, if you want more information about INO, you can see us in the developer zone. Don't forget to go on the community portal. There are also some learning, there is a learning experience about INO in the online learning lab, so you can go there as well. So Luca, if I can get 1 more minute, you just, if there are any questions. Yeah.
Is this in cache right now?
Yeah.
All in there now?
Yeah, everything you saw, well, the technology, the INO technology is built in cache, so you can use it. You need a license, so you have to check what kind of license you need. But yeah, you just install cache. INO is there, all the languages are there, so you can start straight away. So if you have more questions, maybe I will give the floor to Luca, and then you can still bother me in the hallway. I thank you for your attention.